Here's everything you need to know about Set 15, coming out on July 30th. There are a lot of changes going on, including a new set mechanic, new traits, new champions, and a lot of system changes, more than usual, I'd say. But this set is huge because it has this very focused anime theme, featuring all new artwork, a bunch of new skins, specifically for TFT, so this should be actually like a really exciting set. I'm not gonna flame too much, but every now and then there's like a throwaway set, and I think that was last set, because they had a big one right before it, so they have to do another big one right after it. So let's just get right into it. Let's start off with the set mechanic, which are power-ups. So power-ups happen on rounds 1, 3, and 3, 6, and you could kind of think of it as like an anomaly, where it's just a way to buff up 2 different champions. The best part of this is that you could move your power-up onto different units, so you're never locked into one person. You can either sell the unit or use one of the power removers in order to switch your power-up onto a different unit, and power-ups can enhance your champions in many ways, including giving them more stats, giving them some sort of team up effect, changing one of their abilities, or even improving one of their traits. All of these have unique effects, and if you want to pick like a less playstyle breaking one, of course there are those options as well, but because of the removers, you have so many different options to choose from, and it adds a lot more dynamics to TFT. So if you are new, you could think of power-ups as a way to literally just power up your team or a specific champion, and if you have played TFT in the past, you can think of it as an improved take on anomalies. Now let's get into the exciting stuff, which is the new traits. After that, we'll go over all the champions. So let's start off with Bastions. This is a reprint, but your team gains 10 armor and magic resist. Bastions gain more, and the value doubles in the first 10 seconds of combat. This includes champions like Garen and Rell, Xin Zhao, Shen, Swain, Leona, and Braum. And this is just a simple 2-4-6 trait. Next, we have Battle Academia. Battle Academia champions upgrade their abilities and potential improves their abilities. So just like how you can improve your potential by looking at guides on bunnymuffins.lol, these units remind me a lot of AMP units, where getting deeper into a trait makes your unit's abilities more powerful, and this is going to include Ezreal, Garen, Rakan, Katarina, Jace, Caitlyn, Leona, and Yuumi. This is a 3-5-7, but there is a prismatic trait hidden into this, where if you, I believe, have 17 items on your Battle Academia champions, you unlock the prismatic trait. Normally we'd need to reach 10 units of a certain trait, but they changed a lot of that in this set, where they removed the 10 traits and added the prismatics. So if you ever get the Prismatic Battle Academia or any of the other prismatic traits on PBE or when the set goes live, let me know down in the comments in one of my future videos, as I'm sure everyone would like to see that. Next, we have Crystal Gambit. So Crystal Gambit is going to be the fortune trait of the set, but of course there's going to be a little bit of a twist. So this trait focuses much more on killing as many units as possible while still losing. It really rewards that, and it also has a double down mechanic. So for all the degenerates out there, this is going to be the trait for you. Kills and losses during player combat earn gem power. Every 4 player combats, choose to convert gem power into rewards or double it and give it to the next person. So while double down is active, losses grant 100% more gem power, but wins lose 50% of your gems and cashes you out immediately. So those wins can be super deadly, especially if you're getting grief. The units included in this are going to be Syndra, Janna, Vi, Swain, Ashe, and Zyra. Next up, we have our Duelists. So Duelists gain attack speed on each attack, stacking up to 12 times. This is a 2-4-6, and at 6, Duelists gain durability as well. And this is a reprint from before, but this is going to be Kayle, Gangplank, Kai'Sa, Udyr, Viego, Ashe, and Lee Sin. But Lee Sin's a little bit special, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to the champion section. But next we have Edgelords. So Edgelords gain Omnivamp and attack damage, but they also have 40% attack speed while attacking enemies under 50% of their health. So you want to burst people down as much as possible. This is a 2-4-6, and it includes Xayah, Shen, Yasuo, Volibear, Samira, and Yone. Next we have Executioners. Executioners gain critical strike chance, and their spells can critically strike, and there are actually a ton of Executioners out there, despite being a 2-3-4-5. That's going to be Kalista, Katarina, Senna, Ryze, Akali, and Lee Sin. Remember, when you are playing this trait, your spells already critically strike, so try not to build items such as like Infinity Edge, Jeweled Gauntlet, or take augments that make your abilities critically strike as well, unless you check the data on teamfight.lol when the set comes out, because that site will tell you what the best items to build on every unit. Next, we have our Heavyweights. This is a new trait, and essentially your team gains 100 health, and Heavyweights gain additional bonus health and attack damage equal to a percentage of their health. I think this was a missed opportunity to add Gragas into the game, but instead we'll be playing with Zac, Aatrox, Kabuko, Darius, Jace, and Poppy for this trait. Next up we have is Juggernaut. Juggernaut's gain durability increased above 50% health, When a Juggernaut dies, other Juggernauts heal for 10% of their maximum health. I forget what the previous Juggernaut trait did. I knew it did have something to do with durability. I don't remember the secondary effect. I think they just had more durability when they're under 50%. But this is going to be Aatrox, Naafiri, Vi, Dr. Mundo, Udyr, Set, and Lee Sin. And I think one really interesting item to build on this team has got to be something like a Crown Guard, where you gain a shield at the beginning of the fight to make much more use of the durability. Next, we have Luchadors. I don't know how to say this, but this is for all the pro wrestlers out there. They gain bonus attack damage, and at 50% health, Luchadors cleanse negative effects, heal, and leap back into the fight, knocking up enemies in a 1 hex radius for a couple of seconds. And this is a 2 and 4 trait, which includes Gnar, Dr. Mundo, Volibear, and Braum. I played with this personally in one of my games in the playtest, and it is super duper fun to watch. Next, we have Mentors, which is a very interesting new trait that kind of spins off 2 different traits from the past. So this trait is only active when you have exactly 1 or 4 unique mentors. And at 1 mentor, allies gain a bonus such as durability with Kabuko, Udyr giving AD or AP, Yasuo giving attack speed, and Ryze giving mana per attack. Or if you have all 4 mentors out, they all gain bonuses and upgrade their ability, and then your other allies gain nothing. So it's kind of like an all-or-one trait. I guess you don't want to have too many mentors, you know? But it's essentially a spin on like the Divine trait and the Ninja trait from the past, kind of combining the 2 together. The next trait up we have is Mighty Mech, and this is essentially like a Build-A-Bear trait. Gain the Mighty Mech, Mighty Mechs heal it for 10% of the damage they deal, and this is going to be a 3/5/7, and each Mighty Mech's champion star level increases the Mighty Mech's power. That's going to include Aatrox, Lucian, Gangplank, Senna, Jarvan, Karma, and Yone. Next up we have is Prodigy. This one's going to be giving your team more mana regeneration, and Prodigies gain more. We'll talk more about mana regeneration in the system changes up next, but this is a 2/3/4/5, and at 5, Prodigy abilities heal an ally for 12% of the damage dealt, and that's going to be Ezreal, Syndra, Malzahar, Yuumi, and Seraphine. Next up we have is Protectors. Units gain 5% durability while shielded, and once per combat at 50% health, Protectors shield themselves and their closest ally for a percent of their maximum health, and the shields also stack, which is kind of nice. So you could have like a Giga Shield on someone at the very end of the fight potentially. That's going to be Kennen, Malphite, Rakan, Janna, Nico, and Cassante. Next we have Rogue Captain. Twisted Fate upgrades the cruise ship to deal 15% of its damage as true damage and draws bounty cards each round that grant random rewards. This is a legendary only trait, and this is for Twisted Fate, so it could give you stuff like a bunch of gold, maybe like a champion, things like that. I'm sure it does have one crazy reward. I just haven't seen it yet, so we'll have to experiment with that. Next up we have is Rose Mother, another legendary only trait. This one's for Zyra. Essentially you gain placeable plants based on Zyra's star level, and it could either be Grasping Roots, which is kind of tanky, or Deadly Spines, which is going to deal more damage depending on if you put this in the front or back rows. The plants benefit from Zyra's ability power and attack speed, and when Zyra casts, her plants restore 50% health and gain attack speed for the rest of combat, and if the plant is dead, she revives it instead. So you definitely want to be protecting your Zyra. If you have a lot of tanks, maybe use this as a damage dealer, and if you don't have a lot of tanks, obviously put it up front, have it tank for you. Pretty neat stuff there. Snipers is going to be the next trait. This is just a generic long-range trait, and snipers gain damage amp increased against targets further away. So similar to stuff we've seen in the past, and that's going to include Gnar, Sivir, Jhin, Caitlyn, Jinx, and Varus. Sorcerers are next. They gain bonus ability power, and when an enemy dies after being damaged by a sorcerer, they deal a percentage of that enemy's maximum health to another enemy. So it's kind of like an overkill mechanic, which is pretty neat. I don't think we've seen that in a trait before, and usually sorcerers only gave ability power before. Now we see they have that plus like this extra damage effect. That's going to include Lucian, Kennen, Lux, Swain, Ahri, Karma, and Gwen. The only tank in this trait is going to be the Swain, so it would be interesting to see maybe like a Swain Ahri reroll. They're both 3-cost units, who knows. I will be making comps for the set when the set comes out. Maybe I do one for PBE, I'm not sure. Let me know if you'd be interested down below, because I know some people, they want to win on PBE, and some people, they want to just try random stuff out on PBE. It really depends on what you kind of want to do. Next up, we have our Soul Fighters. Soul Fighters gain bonus health and gain attack damage and ability power every second up to 8 stacks. At max stacks, they deal bonus true damage. And this one also has a prismatic trait where you deal 99 player damage. You unlock the 10 trait, or like the prismatic trait as we've seen in the past. But this is going to include Kalista, Naafiri, Lux, Xin Zhao, Viego, Samira, Set, and Gwen. Next up we have is Stance Master. So remember how we saw Lee Sin was a duelist, juggernaut, and an executioner? Well, Turns out he can choose which one he wants to be. So depending on your team comp, if you want to fill out a certain trait, Lee Sin's going to be the guy for you. And it also changes his abilities. For example, in Juggernaut, he gains more durability and then deals a bunch of physical damage to the target and also deals damage in an AoE. Next up, we have our Star Guardians. So Star Guardians is another one of those with a prismatic trait, but it also unlocks based on how many Star Guardians you have in exactly. So that's going to be Rel, Syndra, Xayah, Ahri, Neeko, Poppy, Jinx, Seraphine, and also if you have an emblem, it does do a little thing too where it increases everything else. And essentially, the bonus is granted to all other Star Guardian, and every Star Guardian on the field increases everyone's bonus, which is kind of cool. We haven't really seen something like this before. So we have 8 of these Star Guardian champions, but there also is a prismatic version where if you spend 20,000 mana, and these numbers are subject to change. I mean, every number we've discussed so far is subject to change, right? You unlock the prismatic trait, which obviously will do some crazy stuff. But I think this trait's pretty cool where you just gain a bonus no matter how many units you have in. So it definitely is very flexible and also very beginner friendly. So I think if you're new to the set, this is going to be the comp to kind of play around with the most, as it'll probably be the easiest one to run with. Next up, we have our Strategist. Strategist gives bonuses at Combat Star based on where your units are. So if you're in the front 2 rows, you gain a shield. And if you're in the back 2 rows, you gain damage amplifications, and Strategists gain triple. That's going to be Janna, Ziggs, Ryze, and Jarvan. Next up, we have his Supreme Cells. The cell who dealt the most damage last combat is Supreme. When the Supreme Cell dies, the cell with the highest current damage becomes Supreme, and then cells gain damage amp, and the Supreme Cell gains more and executes enemies under 10% health. So we have not seen a trait like this ever, but you do have to play around with like your ordering of your units and positioning, so you make sure like someone dies first and then passes it on to someone else, or maybe you just want your Supreme Cell to live the entire time. But that's going to include Kennen, Kai'Sa, Darius, and Akali. Very interesting stuff there. Next we have is a legendary trait, which is from Braum. It's called the Champ. And the Champ's victories against players grant 2 Poro fans. On a loss, Poro fans prevent 1 tactician damage each, and you lose 75% of your fans when that happens, rounded up. So if you are low on life and you want to preserve your life total in the future, maybe like bank up some wins or something like that, getting a bunch of Poro fans is a way to do that with Braum. I'm not sure how splashable he is. He's also a Lucador and a Bastion, so maybe he is pretty flexible because I guess a lot of different comps use Bastion, so he definitely is one of those legendaries that you can probably play for a couple of rounds just a little bit longer. Next up we have is the Crew. This is by far the most interesting trait of the set so far, and even though we've seen some wacky ones, like the Crew is a new take on reroll traits. Essentially, crew members gain 6% health and attack speed for each crew member fielded, so the more crew members you play, the more bonuses you get. But the trait really only activates based on how many 3-stars you have. So every 3-star crew member grants an additional bonus. So at 1 3-star, you get 1 experience per roll, and crew unit odds never drop with player level. You know how when I make a reroll guide, I say you got to do this, roll on this level because it's optimal or whatever. Well, for crew champions, you could keep leveling up and the shop odds for your crew units stay the same. So you could be like level 10 and you could still hit a bunch of Malphites and Sivers, which are 1-cost units. So that's pretty interesting there. At 2 2-stars, you gain a free reroll every single round. At 3, you deal a bunch of damage with one of the crew's rockets, and then at 4 and 5, it just increases the damage dealt, which could lead to some pretty insane stuff. Obviously, like, I don't know if anyone's gonna get 5 3-stars because you have to 3-star a legendary unit and you have to have all the other crew members in place. It's probably gonna be the craziest prismatic trait of all. I don't even know what could even happen there. But that's gonna include Malphite, Sivir, Shen, Ziggs, and Twisted Fate. And then last up we have is the Wraith trait. Your lowest health Wraith heals for 18% of damage dealt by Wraiths and the Shadow Realm, and every 5 seconds the Shadow Realm strikes the 3 closest enemies, dealing total magic damage equal to a portion of damage dealt by Wraiths since the last trigger. So it's going to be a 2-4-6, and this includes Kayle, Zac, Jhin, Malzahar, and K'Sante, and Varus. So a couple of reprints, couple of new traits. I think all the new traits are a bit wacky, like maybe I need to reread some of them twice a little bit, but as per usual, like if you are running a trait, you just want to run more of them, right, to get a bigger bonus. So that's what I normally do, just try to hit the trait breakpoints and hope that the game is kind of balanced, you know. But they did definitely push the limits with some of the new traits, most notably like the Crew trait for the reroll trait, and I think the Fortune trait called Crystal Gambit is going to be a much deeper trait than what they've tried in the past. Let's get on into the champions though. Let's start off with the 1-cost units. Aatrox, he's a Mighty Mech, Juggernaut, and Heavyweight, and his ability is Blade Vigor, where he just heals and deals damage to his current target, and then those numbers are increased up to 100% based on his missing health, so just generic 1-cost unit, nothing too crazy there. Next we have Ezreal, who's a Battle Academia and Prodigy, and his spell is Rising Spell Force. Fire a blast at the current target, dealing magic damage and physical damage, so he's kind of like a hybrid carry, and based on his potential, he gets more bonuses, so he could blink a short distance, gain attack speed, and also AD and AP for the rest of combat. Next we have Garen, also a Battle Academia, but then a Bastion. His ability is Mighty Blade of Justice, where he heals and deals physical damage to a target, so very similar to Aatrox. Gnar is going to have Gata, where he gains 8% ability power for each attack against the same target, up to 80%. And then his active is for 6 seconds, gain 90% attack damage. His passive is gain 8% attack speed for each attack against the same target, up to 80%. And then for 6 seconds, gain 90% attack damage and grant 2 nearby allies 20% attack damage, prioritizing attack damage champions. He's going to be a Lucador and Sniper. Next we have is Kalista. She's a Soul Fighter and Executioner, and her ability is Spirit Spear, where she hurls a spear at the furthest target, dealing physical damage to the first enemy hit. If the enemy dies with the spear, it continues to deal overkill damage to the next enemy hit. Next we have Kayle. Kayle's very interesting. It's kind of like a semi-reprint from the past where she kind of ascends as you level up. So her passive is attacks deal bonus magic damage, and you gain power based on your tactician level. At level 6, every third attack launches an additional wave and also shreds enemies. And at level 9, every attack launches a wave that travels further and further. She's going to be a Wraith and Duelist. Kenan's ability is going to be Eye of the Hurricane. Heal and then deal magic damage to the 2 nearest enemies and stun them for 1 second. He's going to be a Supreme Cell Protector and Sorcerer. Lucian, Mighty Mech and Sorcerer. Fire 4 shots towards the target. Each deals magic damage to the first enemy hit. For each miss, restore 10 mana. So interestingly enough, Lucian is going to be an ability power champion this time instead of an attack damage like he normally is. Malphite's a Crew and Protector. His ability is Regolith Resistance, and his passive is he just gains more armor, so definitely build armor items on him. I'm sure a Bramble will do very well. And then his active is deal physical damage to enemies in a cone based on his armor and ability power. Neferi's ability is Spinning Soul Slaw. Gain a shield for 2 seconds and then deal physical damage to a target. Nothing too crazy going on there. Neferi is going to be a Soul Fighter and Juggernaut. Rell is next up. She is going to be a Star Guardian and Bastion. Unbreakable Celestial Lance is going to deal magic damage in a short line through the target, then reduce damage taken for 4 seconds. Then we have Sivir with Star Cutter. Launch a returning blade 2 hexes through the current target, dealing physical damage to enemies hit, reduced by 40% per hit. She's going to be a Crew and Sniper. Next we have Syndra, Bright Star Blast. Deal magic damage to the target and reduce their magic resist by 10. So you want to cast a lot with her, maybe build a blue buff on her. Blue buff is being changed though, but she's going to be a Crystal Gambit, Star Guardian, and Prodigy. And last up for the 1 cost, we have Zac. Zac is going to be a Wraith and a Heavyweight, and his ability is called Reality Ripple, where you healed and deal magic damage to enemies within a 1 hex radius. Let's move on into 2 costs now. Dr. Mundo is going to be first up with Steel Chair Slam. Every 7 seconds, the next attack deals bonus physical damage, and then his active is going to be gaining maximum health over a couple of seconds and then immediately trigger his passive. He's going to be a Lucador and Juggernaut. Next up we have is Gangplank. He's going to have the Golden Giga Gun, where you deal physical damage to the lowest health enemy within 2 hexes, and if the target dies, you have a 40% chance to gain 1 gold, which can be increased by ability power, so maybe you'll build a Hand of Justice on him, or I don't know, like get him AP somehow. I forget which items give both AD and AP, maybe it's only like Hextech Gunblade or something like that. A lot of the random ones do though, like I think Giant Slayer gives both or something like that, but Gangplank's gonna be a Mighty Mech and a Duelist. Janna's the next 2 costs as a Crystal Gambit, Protector, and a Strategist, so a triple trader. I noticed there are 2 Crystal Gambit units that are triple traders. So grant shield to the 2 lowest health allies for 4 seconds and fire butterflies, dealing a bunch of magic damage split between the 2 closest enemies. Jin's gonna have the Curtain Falls. He has no mana and his passive is attack speed is always 0.75. Convert 1% bonus attack speed into 0.8% attack damage. Every 4th attack is enhanced to deal a bunch of physical damage, so you could stack attack speed on him. It converts anyways to attack damage, or you could just go straight for the attack damage. The choice is yours. Again, like for optimal items, teamfight.lol, when the set comes out, will be data-based, so it's going to be pretty simple to find out the best build for him there. Kai'Sa is going to have Missile Massacre, which is a stacking trait. So I don't think we have any 1 cost stacking traits. It's just the Kai'Sa so far at 2 costs, where her passive is kills grant 1% permanent attack damage and the active is firing a bunch of missiles to nearby targets, dealing physical damage. So she's going to be a Supreme Cell and a Duelist. So maybe you want to get her as your Supreme Cell, get her really stacked up, and yeah, probably have a blast there. Katarina is going to teleport behind you, where she blinks to the enemy with the lowest health within a couple of hexes, and then deals magic damage to enemies in a 1 hex radius. Going to be a really sick reset champion. She's going to be a Battle Academia and an Executioner. Kabuko is going to have Golden Paw Mantra, where he gains a shield and then the next attack deals physical damage and also stuns them, so mana items are probably going to be good on him. He's going to be a Mentor and a Heavyweight. Lux is going to have Soulfire Explosion, where she fires an energy ball towards the largest group of enemies containing the target, and on arrival, shreds enemies and deals a bunch of magic damage split between them, and she's going to be a Soul Fighter and Sorcerer. Rakan has All Eyes on Me, where he heals and then deals magic damage to a bunch of close enemies. He's going to be a Battle Academia and Protector. Shen's ability is Power Suit Full Charge, where you shield and then the next 3 attacks deal bonus true damage. Wow, that's going to be interesting with the true damage there based on his magic resistance. So he's going to be like a magic resist tank, I guess. And he's from the Crew, Bastion, and also an Edgelord. Anyone remember the old like multiple Shen build from the past? That sounds very similar to this ability. Vi is a Crystal Gambit and a Juggernaut. Her ability is Shining Knuckle Explosion. Passive is gain resistances for each component equipped to your team. And then her active is healing and dealing physical damage in a 1 hex radius around the target, and also sundering enemies hit. So that's a nice cheap way to get the sunder effect. Since Rakan's a 2 cost, Xayah is also a 2 cost. There's definitely going to be some Xayah Rakan reroll comp that should hopefully be viable at some point in the next set. And Xayah's a Star Guardian and an Edgelord, and you gain attack speed for 3 attacks, and these attacks deal bonus physical damage to the target and also 2 nearby enemies. I would imagine a Rage Blade or something like that would be pretty good on her. The last 2 costs is going to be Xin Zhao as a Soul Fighter and Bastion. His ability is going to heal him and deal physical damage to enemies in a 2 hex radius, marking the current target. And for 3 seconds, you take 40% reduced damage from unmarked enemies. So that's actually like a really tanky 2 cost unit. I wonder how they're gonna balance his like health and resistances and stuff, because that sounds very interesting. Obviously it's only 3 seconds, so it's not the whole game, but still a pretty tanky ability in the late game, that is. Let's move on into 3 costs though. Let's start off with Ahri. 3 costs is when you have like some of the interesting rerolls, some of the trait bots for the fast 8 comps. So it really could go either way, but Ahri is a Star Guardian and a Sorcerer. Her ability is Pure Heartbreaker, and you deal magic damage to the current target, which is actually increased based on the target's missing health. And if the target dies, 80% of the overkill damage is going to be split between the 2 closest enemies. Caitlyn is going to be the next unit up with Battle Academia and Sniper and a magic bouncing bullet. So fire a bullet at the furthest enemy, dealing physical damage to the first target hit, and the bullet bounces to nearby enemies, dealing more damage. So it's kind of like Jin's ability, except it deals more damage to the first unit, and then it does less on the bounces. Whereas this set's Jin, I think he deals more on his 4th bounce rather than his first ones. Darius has a Grand Guillotine, where he heals and then deals physical damage to the current target, increased by 60% against tanks. So there are new classes right now. We'll get more into that right after we go over all the champions. But if the target dies, immediately recast, dealing 75% damage. He's going to be a Supreme Cell and Heavyweight. Jace is a Battle Academia and Heavyweight, so you can pair this easily with the Darius. And his ability is going to be Thundering Hammer Strike, where you deal physical damage to enemies in a 1 hex radius centered around the target, and then you can increase it with your potential. Malzahar is a Wraith and Prodigy, and his ability is Insidious Whispers. Infect the closest 1 unaffected target, and then deal magic damage to them over 15 seconds. If an infected target dies, the infection spreads to nearest uninfected target for any remaining time. So this is why you got a social distance, apparently, because of Malzahar. And if I had to guess, blue buff Morello probably gonna be a really good build on him. Next up we have is Neeko, who is a Star Guardian and Protector. Her ability is Falling Flower Eruption, gain durability and also heal over a couple of seconds, and then deal magic damage to enemies in a 2 hex radius. Nothing too crazy about this ability. I swear we've seen this exact Neeko in the past with the same exact traits as well, Star Guardian and Protector, so that is kind of funny to see. Senna's gonna have the Super Beam Cannon. Over 1 second, deal a bunch of physical damage in a line through the current target. Enemies after the first take a little bit less damage, and then when no targets are left, regain mana based on the amount of time remaining. She's going to be a Mighty Mech and Executioner. Swain is going to have Glittering Plumage Regalia. gain max health, and then deal magic damage every second to enemies in a 2 hex radius. Subsequent cast heal and increase the damage dealt. He's going to be a Crystal Gambit, Bastion, and Sorcerer, another 3 trader. Udyr has Blazing Phoenix stance where he makes 3 rapid attacks. Each attack heals Udyr and deals additional physical damage to enemies in a 1 hex radius, and then he is going to be a Mentor, Juggernaut, and Duelist. Viego is going to have combo of the Ruin King, where his passive is just dealing magic damage, and then his active is going to be the next 3 attacks unleash a devastating combo. So he has Pommel Bash dealing magic damage, Rising Slash dealing magic damage and briefly knocking them up, and then Falling Slash, which deals double the magic damage. He's going to be a Soul Fighter and Duelist, so getting tons of attacks off. I could see Quicksilver being absolutely nuts on this guy. Yasuo is going to have Unleash the Storm, where he deals physical damage to the 3 closest enemies, and he is going to be a Mentor and Edgelord. And last up, we have his Ziggs with Orbital Ordnance. Passive, his attacks are bouncing bombs that deal magic damage to the first enemy hit, and then his active is magic damage in a 1 hex radius centered to the target. Ziggs is absolutely hilarious because, yeah, he just throws a bomb and it like just trickles to someone instead of just being a regular auto attack, and he's going to be a crew and strategist. Now let's get into the forecasts. Forecasts are a bit juicier because this is where we build a lot of our teams around for Fast 8, and that's like one of the most popular ways to play. We're going to start off with Akali, Supreme Cell, and Executioner. Her ability is Piercing Phantom Strike. Mark the furthest unmarked target within 4 hexes, then dash through all marked enemies in order. Each dash deals magic damage to its target and magic damage to other enemies hit. So she just goes crazy around the board, dashing everywhere, and pretty much is all over the entire map, which is kind of cool. Supreme Cell and Executioner there. There are a lot of different carry potentials from the Supreme Cell. I think that's kind of one of the more interesting traits from the new set. Next up, we have is Ashe, Gates of Avarosa. The next 8 attacks fire bonus arrows, dealing physical damage split between the target and up to 2 random enemies within 2 hexes. She's going to be a Crystal Gambit and Duelist. Interesting. She's like one of the few Crystal Gambits that's just a 2 trader. Jarvan's going to have Mega Drill Crash and gain shield and then slam into a group of enemies, dealing magic damage to enemies within a 2 hex radius and then also stunning them. He's going to be a Mighty Mech and a strategist. Jarvan's always a strategist for some reason, but I swear whenever a Jarvan's on my team in League, like they just run in and die. Next up we have is Jinx, Star Rocket Blastoff. Passive is attacks grant stacking attack speed up to a certain cap, and then critical strikes instead grant even more. Her active is deal physical damage to the target and even more physical damage split across a 2 hex radius centered on the target. She's going to be a Star Guardian and a Sniper. That's actually a ton of damage, holy cow. But it's weird, you have to build crit on her, but she's also based on attack speed, which is kind of tricky because normally when you build an attack damage carry, you either go like all attack damage and attack speed or like just crit and attack damage. You don't really combine attack speed and critical strike that often, but she's going to be one of those exceptions there. Cassante is a Wraith and Protector, and his ability is Breakout Force with a passive called All Out. On first death, instead heal to full, gaining 100% attack speed while converting 50% of armor and magic resist into attack damage, and also set your max mana to 30, then dash through the target and briefly stun them. While All Out, lose 6% health each second and heal on kill. His active is going to be gaining durability and then dealing physical damage to the target, and his active during All Out is dealing a lot of physical damage to the target. Karma is a Mighty Mech and Sorcerer, and her ability is Destruction Disc, fire an energy disc that deals continuous damage in a 1 hex radius centered on the target. The disc vanishes after dealing 1000 total magic damage. Pretty simple there, just like a AP nuke. Leona, Aegis of the Unbreakable Dawn, shield for 4 seconds and deal magic damage to enemies within a 2 hex radius. She is going to be a Battle Academia and a Bastion, so interesting. She's not a Star Guardian this time around. Poppy is going to be a Star Guardian and Heavyweight. Her ability is Spinning Galaxy Hammer, where you gain 500 shield for 4 seconds. When it breaks, deal physical damage to the target and physical damage to other enemies in a 1 hex radius centered on the target. And then the target is also stunned for a couple of seconds depending on how long the shield was held for, and other enemies are briefly stunned. Oh, that's interesting. So you either get a ton of value from your shield or you get a ton of value from the stun, so she's kind of like a good hedge unit. Because sometimes, you know, you have a shield unit and then they get a giant shield and then no one attacks them for some reason. Hopefully that should be fixed this set with Poppy and with like one of the system changes that I'm going to talk about really soon. Ryze has the ability Tsunami Beam, where he deals 800 magic damage to the target over 3 seconds. Enemies within a 1 hex radius around the target take 135 damage over the same duration. And he's going to be a Mentor, Executioner, and a Strategist. Samira is a Soul Fighter and Edgelord, and her ability is Soul Shot or Inner Arsenal Unleashed, and her passive is after casting, gain 1 style and 5 Omnivamp. up to 4 stacks. At max stacks, the next cast is Inner Arsenal Unleashed. So the first ones are Soul Shot, which deal physical damage to the target and dash a short distance. Inner Arsenal Unlocked doubles the passive bonus and leaps to a nearby group of enemies, dealing 360 damage to all enemies in a 2 hex radius, and then you reset your style to 0. Set is going to be a Soul Fighter and Juggernaut. His ability is Maximum Grit Overdrive. Over a short duration, heal and deal physical damage to the target, then deal magic damage in a cone. Enemies in the center line take 10 more physical damage, increase based on healing received this combat. Next up, we have Volibear. Volibear is going to be a Lucador and Edgelord, and his ability is Ursine Instinct. Every 4th attack deals physical damage in a 1 hex radius centered on the target. When changing targets, immediately slam for 150% damage, so he just dashes around everywhere and is like super duper duper fast. His active is for 5 seconds, gain 99% attack speed and 10% Omnivamp and crowd control immunity. Wow, I did not read this ability until now. When I played Volibear, I was building Quicksilver on him because I was like, wow, Quicksilver probably works really, really well with his passive, but I didn't know his active gave him crowd control immunity, so that's pretty funny there. Another really funny thing about Volibear is that one of his power-ups gives him extra range, but I don't really think he needs the extra range if you build him defensively. But I guess you could go like all damage instead, so I guess you have to adapt your builds to your power-ups. Crazy concept, I know. Next up we have is Yuumi. Yuumi is going to be a Battle Academia and a Prodigy, so both studying and also a Prodigy. And read or die, I guess. Launch 20 pages, dealing 30 magic damage each, split between the target and enemies within 2 hexes. Subsequent casts add 5 pages. So I guess we're going to be hit with some knowledge there. At 3 potential, every 5 pages, you launch a bonus page that deals 30 true damage instead. So that could be pretty deadly. But that's going to be all the 4 costs. Let's move on into 5 costs now, which obviously are going to be the more interesting units compared to everything else. Or not more interesting necessarily, but more like unique, I would say. First, let's start off with Braum, which is a champ, Lucador, and Bastion. So I was playing Braum wrong, I think. Like, his recommended items are actually bruiser items, despite being a Bastion. So he's actually going to be dealing some damage this time around. He's not like a 5-cost Giga Tank or anything like that. But El Tigre Tornado, stun the target and spin them around for 1.5 seconds, so there's his like utility, but then you also deal like a ton of physical damage to the target and other enemies within 2 hexes, and then you also throw the target, dealing more damage in a 1 hex area around the target, and if the target drops below 18% health, throw them off the board instead. So he's a really good executing champion. It's a hilarious animation, and overall like very fun champ that I've seen so far. Gwen is going to be a Soul Fighter and Sorcerer. Her ability is Soul Stitch or Rip the Threads, and her passive is dealing magic damage in a cone. Every 3rd attack, you rip the threads instead. So Soul Stitch is fire 3 needles through the board, dealing 107 magic damage to enemies hit, leaving threads behind, and then ripping the threads deals 1,000 some damage split between all enemies and bonus magic damage to each. Enemies near at least 1 thread take 10% more damage. Okay, so that could be pretty crazy. If you ever get like a Zonia's, I could see that being really good on her because you just want her to live a long time to put threads everywhere. Next up we have is Seraphine, who's a Star Guardian and a Prodigy. Her ability is going to be Ultimate Friendship Bomb. Passive is going to be Ultimate Friendship Bomb's damage scales off of the power of friendship, which is based on all of your team's bonus stats, and stats on Seraphine contribute more. Active is going to be firing a friendship bomb towards the largest group of enemies within 5 hexes, dealing magic damage based on your power of friendship in a 2 hex radius. So Seraphine is going to be getting huge benefits the later the game goes on because you're going to have more and more stats. So she's probably like a win more type of unit. And maybe if you're in like the super late game, play her because she's going to take your team to a whole nother level. Next up, we have is Twisted Fate. You guys know me. I love Twisted Fate in every single set that has ever been played. He's going to be a rogue captain and the crew. 52 card Calamity is the ability where the passive is attacks bounce between 3 enemies, dealing bonus magic damage and marking them, and attacks deal 30% reduced damage per hit. The active is dealing physical damage to 4 enemies and then detonating their marks for magic damage. So he's kind of like a hybrid carry, I'm guessing, which is a little bit weird to build, but it is a legendary, so it is a bit different. Varus is going to be a Wraith and a Sniper, and his ability is level 0 100-shot demon. So gain mana when units die. Enemies grant 5, allies grant 3. The active is going to be firing 3 piercing arrows per second at random enemies until Varus is out of mana, and each arrow costs 12 mana and deals 110 physical damage, reduced by 35% per hit. Yone is going to be a mighty mech and an edgelord, and his ability is dual blade technique, inner reflection. Okay, this sounds exactly like something out of an anime. The passive is attacks grant 5% stacking attack speed and movement speed and alternate between dealing bonus true damage and magic damage. And the active is sending out an echo to the 2 furthest enemies, dealing physical damage and briefly knocking up enemies hit. Last but not least, we have Zyra. With Crystal Thorn expansion, she's going to be a Crystal Gambit and Rose Mother, Rose Mother being her unique trait. And then you summon 4 untargetable Thorn Spitters that deal magic damage per attack and also attack 4 times. Non-plant allies gain attack speed, decaying over 4 seconds. So she's a great support unit. She's obviously Crystal Gambit and Rose Mother, so she doesn't really have real traits towards the end of the game. So definitely one of those great splashable units at the end. But now that we've covered all the champions, let's go on into the system changes. So first things first, mana regen is completely changed now. They classified everything into like magic tank, physical tanks, range damage dealers, and melee damage dealers, and they essentially revamped the way mana is calculated. So essentially, only tanks gain mana from taking damage now, which is a huge change from the past. Before, everyone gained mana the same way, where you attack for 10 mana, and then you also have like this weird calculation of gaining mana when you take damage. So they want to get rid of that. So now only tanks gain mana when they take damage, and they also gain a little bit of mana whenever they attack. Melee damage dealers, they get innate Omnivamp, I think it's like 10%, and they also gain mana from attack. Some casters are like the regular, oh, I gain 10 mana per attack, but some of the other ones, they gain 7 mana per attack and then gain 2 mana per second instead. So mana per second is going to be this new type of stat, and pretty much the tier items change, blue buff is changed, everything's changed with mana. Essentially, blue buff is now just a mana regen item, and it still fulfills its old purpose of like, if you need mana, you build it, but it does compete with Spirit Shojin in a bit of a weird way. Shojin's kind of like the weird midpoint between gaining mana and also gaining damage stats, whereas blue buff is more of a dedicated mana item. Next, we have unit targeting. So based on these new roles, remember how before we used to place our melee carries kind of like in the second row, just so that they don't get targeted first? Now you can place them in the front row because all the tank units have like the tank role, and they get targeted first if there's a tie in distance. So if someone's in the top right corner, they'll target Zac instead of Viego here. So very interesting change there. I wonder how this will play out. Positioning is definitely going to be a lot more intuitive now and a lot easier. So I'm definitely welcoming that change. Maybe there's some way to like force very certain interactions with this new targeting change, which could lead to some interesting positioning choices. Next up, we have item changes. Again, we talked about the mana per second. So tier and blue buff now give mana per second, but they're also removing all the support items. At least that's what I've heard. They might bring them back in the future, who really knows? Or maybe they're just testing this change out. Lastly, like we already talked about this, but the prismatic traits, they don't exist anymore in the classical sense where if you get 10 units of a certain trait, you unlock the prismatic. Now you have to complete like a mini quest or like a side quest to get them. And yeah, we'll have to see how rare it is, you know, like we don't need to chase like infinite emblems anymore. Now we have to like go towards a certain target, which again are going to be very difficult to get, but simple as like needing level 10 and also getting like a ton of emblems and also hitting like the legendary of your unit. Like that does not happen anymore. By the way, I forgot to mention this in the item section, but for all those people who miss blue buff, like blue buff still exists as an artifact item now through Dawn Core. This is going to be reducing the holder's max mana by 10 and subsequent spellcasts reduce mana by 10% to a minimum of 15. So if you want to do like giga casting, Dawn Core is going to be the item for you. So just like Rageblade, where they turned it into an artifact item, or like the old Rageblade, they did the same thing with blue buff, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, those are all the system changes. Those are all the traits, champions, and set mechanics and whatever. There are more things to know about the sets, such as like all the augments and power-ups and things like that. But there are like over 100 power-ups and like over 300 augments. Obviously, some of them are kind of duplicates based on like silver, gold, prismatic, but there's a ton of stuff to explore in this next set. So hopefully we get to experience all of that. I'll be coming out with guides when the set comes out on the 30th. So let me know down below if you have any requests on what you want to see on this channel in the future, and hopefully I will do those. But thank you all so much for listening to this set preview. Hopefully you were able to learn a little bit more about the set, and I will see you all in the next video.